Hello, welcome to Earth Echoes with Amber Fields. I am Amber Fields, and today I'd like to do something a little bit different and just talk from my heart about some changes that I've been making in my life lately in order to be more in tune and be healthy. And so I guess I'll just start at the beginning and see how it goes. Like a lot of people, I experienced trauma as a child, various forms of trauma. And in middle school, I started sometimes drinking alcohol and smoking marijuana. And at first it kind of started as a way to be cool or to fit in with other kids. But I think pretty quickly it also became a way to bury pain or an attempt to release that pain or deal with it. Because, middle school was so hard socially. And so that's pretty young to start those things, and it wasn't like I was doing them all the time at that point, but that's when my relationship with intoxicants started, and it grew over time. In high school, I was arrested a couple of times for drinking. Once I drank too much at school during lunch break, and so much so that when I was in class, I actually threw up and ran out of class, and the assistant principal found me, and I ended up getting arrested and having to go on probation and deal with all that. And luckily I switched schools, and but then a couple years later, after I'd gotten my driver's license, I was still using alcohol to cope with life in various ways, and made some poor decisions and ended up getting arrested again for drinking and driving. And at that time I actually had to spend a night in juvie, and that was very humiliating and embarrassing. And I was forced to quit all forms of intoxicant at that point because I was on probation and having to take drug tests and whatnot. Luckily for me, I was always a good student throughout that, and so I managed to get a scholarship to go to college, which was just a super big blessing. Went to college, and my relationship with alcohol and marijuana continued, as it does for many college students. And I, luckily, again, I was able to maintain a level of responsibility. So I never had my addiction to those things ruin my life like it does for a lot of people, and I'm very grateful for that. But I recognize that even though I might have, I've never been like a raging alcoholic or anything like that, I definitely was using it to numb a lot of the pain in life. But then also, at the same time, I'd use it to like celebrate and feel good. And so just an unhealthy relationship, like a lot of people have with those substances. And as I've grown older, like many people can probably relate, the effects, especially of alcohol, of just, I think they become more obvious as we age. And I'm someone that really likes to exercise, and so I've come to notice that if I've even just had a couple of drinks the next day, if I want to go mountain biking or go for a run, it doesn't feel good in the ways that it should. Sometimes, got a headache or whatever it may be. And that's kind of been my relationship with alcohol and marijuana, is like never overboard, but always just a little bit. But it's gotten to the point where I realize that I've used it as a crutch, and I don't want to anymore, and I don't need to. And there's other changes happening in my life, other reasons why I want to let these things go. So it's kind of hard to talk about and post publicly, but I know that a lot of people are going through similar things, and if my journey can help someone, then that's what I would like. And like I've mentioned before in these recordings, this spring I found the writings of Jason Gray on Facebook, and I was just drawn to them. And he and I started messaging, and he asked me to do some Facebook Lives, and so I did, and it's led to me starting my own YouTube channel, and I've found that I really like reading to people and talking about this stuff out loud. And something that Jason writes a lot about is sobriety, because he had a near-death experience that was caused from an overdose. And I haven't read any of his posts yet that are about drugs and alcohol, specifically about alcohol and marijuana and the curse that they can be in people's lives. They're super powerful posts, and I will read them. But it was a good reminder for me that they aren't, we all know they're not healthy in a lot of ways, even though I know that a lot of people use marijuana as a medicine. I've seen the ways in my own life personally that it's not beneficial, especially for someone with high anxiety, which after all the traumas that I've experienced throughout my life, and then losing my mother-in-law to suicide and finding her in her home that way, and then losing my sister-in-law to suicide and my brother as well, and then having a child later in life during COVID when there's no support, pretty much. My anxiety levels had reached a tipping point, I guess. Oh, and then my husband and I built our own house, from stump to stud, as they say. We had the crazy idea to build our home off-grid, and we bought a sawmill. We were both foresters, and so many of the trees in our home, we cut them down. A lot of them were already dead or would be going to be cut down anyways, and then we sawed them into lumber and went through the whole process to make our home. I laid some of the rocks that are right behind me, and that was another thing that was super challenging. It took us 5 years all in all. We were living off the grid during that time, building our off-the-grid home, and lived out of a cooler, didn't have a fridge for 5 years. Lived in a little cabin that was 300 square feet. Gosh, now I'm like, was it 300? It was about that. It's tiny, just a one-room cabin with a loft. No electricity, just one little solar panel for a light and a radio. So no refrigeration, and we had an outhouse. And that was also very challenging and created a lot of stress in my life that I was using alcohol and marijuana to cope with. And we did finish our home, and then went into another very stressful period of our life where we spent 5 years and volunteered thousands of hours of our lives to save the Granite Dells in Prescott, Arizona from development. And we did manage to get 474 acres of amazingly beautiful heaven on earth land transferred into ownership to the city of Prescott, and it's now open space. And that was also incredibly stressful. So by the time I came out of having a child and losing my brother and being executor of his will, I was like buzzing with anxiety, and alcohol just made it worse. Or, it would be like it would help for a little bit until the next day. So after I started healing from all that, I was still drinking and smoking, and then although I knew that it wasn't healthy for me. And I remember when I first started doing those things as a child, I remember my higher self encouraging me not to, definitely. But the pain in life sometimes is so great that I was like, well, I can quit when I'm older. I can, use it in this way, but I'm not an alcoholic, or I'm not a drunk, those sorts of things. And then, I started reading Jason Gray's works this spring, and they just touched me so deeply, and I came to find out how he feels about those substances, and that how he struggled with them and died and came back from the other side. And I found a lot of wisdom in his words. And so recently I've decided to take the step, stop making excuses, and stop drinking and stop smoking. And today's day 9, so it's pretty fresh, but with the encouragement of a lot of good people in my life. I've started going to AA meetings, and I got the big book, and I got a book about the 12 steps and that tradition. So I'm just at the beginning of my journey of sobriety. And it hasn't been easy. I quit more than 9 days ago, but it was like, oh, well, I'll stop drinking and then I'll stop smoking, or I'll stop smoking and then I'll stop drinking. And again, like, I would only ever have like a couple drinks a night, but it was consistent. It was most nights, I'd have a couple drinks. And so finally I said, okay, I just need to stop, just do it, both. And so 9 days ago I did, and I found at first that it brought a lot of sadness to me, because I think some of the trauma that I tried to bury, it wasn't gone. It was just underneath the surface. And so I've been experiencing those waves of emotion, and then I had a difficult night a few nights ago when I was messaging with someone who's quit drinking and was saying, thank goodness for kombucha. And they were like, oh, well, there's alcohol in kombucha. It's not a lot, but it's a fermented drink. And I knew it was a fermented drink, but I was like, oh, man, yeah, 0 means 0. And where I'm coming from with not wanting to drink any alcohol at all is because I can feel the frequency, the negative vibrations in alcohol that, I don't want to put that in my body anymore. I'm trying to change my frequency to healthier state, and I know that if I'm not taking it down to zero for me right now, then it's not enough. I want to really go back to the baseline, being me, being Amber, feeling all the emotions, going through it all, not numbing, not using any crutches. So I just wanted to share that with everyone today, because I know that there's a lot of other people going through similar things, and I know that there's a lot of other people using alcohol or marijuana or other drugs as ways to deal with trauma and pain in life, or wanting to fit in. So if my experience can help anyone, then that's great. So I've decided to tear the mask off, and we'll see how it goes. Thanks for listening.